bring in Peter King, a Football Morning in America columnist, and also contributes to NBC Sports as well. Peter, good morning. How are you?
Hey, Dan, everything's going great. How about you?
All good. If I told you a week ago that Mac Jones would be the starter in New England or that Cam Newton was going to be released, which one would have surprised you the most?
Cam Newton being released. And it just says to me that, A, Bill Belichick wants to make a clean break. And look, Dan, for the last 12 months, everybody who has watched Cam Newton play has been trying to think of reasons why he doesn't look like Cam Newton and why he wasn't the Cam Newton of, 5, 6 years ago. He's still young, relatively speaking, in quarterback age. But the fact is, Cam Newton had not played well. And, I remember covering Bill Parcells for 4 years in the 80s when I worked for Newsday and he's coaching the Giants with Bill Belichick on the staff. Once a week, Bill Parcells would have this mantra, fellas, saying to guys in the press, because at that time there were no women covering the team, fellas, I can only go by what I see. And Bill Belichick this summer watched as Mac Jones, maybe marginally, but certainly did outperform Cam Newton in training camp. So I think he just felt like I didn't see very much with Cam Newton last year. And the rookie has outperformed him this year. And the rookie certainly doesn't either play or act like a rookie. I'm going with him. So I applaud Bill Belichick. I really think that quarterbacks come in different shapes and sizes and mental acuity. And obviously this guy who he feels can handle what Brian Flores is going to throw at him in 10 days.
What about Cam's future as a starter?
I mean, would you hire Cam Newton and put him in a starting quarterback role right now? I wouldn't.
If you're the Texans, would you?
Well, you ask yourself, here's the question. If you're the Houston Texans, do you bring Cam Newton, a tarnished Cam Newton in, who has not done anything in your playbook in the entire offseason? And do you bring him in and give him a crash course and try to get him ready to play Jacksonville in 10 days or to get him ready to play at some point this year?
Yeah.
Maybe you do. But Dan, I watched Cam Newton play last year. I don't know what that was really. He's okay. But to me, the big question is, would Cam Newton be a backup for backup money and maybe work himself back into position to earn a starting job? I think it would take a lot of humility to do that. He might do it. I don't really know Cam Newton, so I can't tell you what he might do, but I think it would take some humility for him to go somewhere right now as a backup player. So if I were him, I'd sit out, wait until somebody had a desperate need for a quarterback, had a big injury, and then I would sign with that team.
Yeah, I can't see him doing what Jameis Winston did in New Orleans, where you go in there and you're just going to sit and be quiet and watch Drew Brees. I know there are other landing spots. Would the Pittsburgh Steelers work for Cam Newton? Would the Ravens work as a backup quarterback? Minnesota Vikings situation. I don't buy the Dallas Cowboys, bringing him in as a big personality. I just, knowing Cam, he doesn't want to. I just don't think he can process being a backup quarterback. I just don't see that happening.
I mean, look, football, I think, is so different from the other sports. In baseball, I turned on the TV the other night and I see the Red Sox are pitching Brad Peacock. And, so in baseball, everybody gets recycled about 6 times. And in football, a backup quarterback can get recycled. Josh McCown can play for 15 years as a backup quarterback, which he did. He made a lot of money. He had a little bit of glory. I'm sure he had a lot of fun. But you have to be willing to say, I am in service to the guy in front of me. And maybe Cam Newton can say that. As I say, I don't know. But I certainly wouldn't say, hey, Cam, you're our guy. What has he done recently to prove that he should have a franchise put in his hands?
I know Urban Meyer came out and talked about those that weren't vaccinated, that he did factor that in and who he was going to cut. I was told this morning that the NFL Players Association might be looking into the Titans and the Colts for doing the same thing. But I just don't know how you prove that. I don't know if Bill Belichick didn't want to keep Cam Newton because he wasn't vaccinated, on top of not performing that well. Can the Players Association fight this? Is there any headway that can be made here that guys got cut because, in part, they're not vaccinated?
I think you would have to prove that the guy had equal ability to another player, and the only reason that he was cut is because he was unvaccinated. I think if you can prove that, and I think that's going to be hard to prove, then you probably have a case. I think this is one of the dumbest rules I've ever seen enacted in my 38 years covering the NFL. Who wouldn't consider vaccine status when, understand this, Dan, an unvaccinated player tests positive on a Friday, he is missing his team's next 2 games. I mean, what if you're the Miami Dolphins or Jacksonville, Tampa? You are in a state where the virus is on fire, and it's all you can do every day to avoid any of your guys getting the virus. I think you would be irresponsible to not consider a player's vaccination status when figuring out your final roster, particularly if you're a team in Florida.
But it feels like Urban Meyer said what others think, and maybe that's what got him in trouble. I mean, he's used to, yeah, but I mean, he's used to saying what he wants to because he was in college and nobody was really checking him on this.
You know what? I was told this after Urban said what he said, and that is that there was not a single one of the final cuts of the Jaguars that it came down to vaccination status. Were they aware of vaccination status of the players they kept and the players they cut? Yes. And again, Dan, I am not reporting that vaccination status had nothing to do with it, because I don't know that. But what I have heard reliably is that it wasn't the driving force in any of the roster decisions they made. But I think Urban Meyer was simply saying what every other coach in the league, every other general manager in the league takes into account, which is we will know and factor in a player's vaccination status. You know why? Because it is irresponsible not to.
The Deshaun Watson situation, to me, is he's going to be a healthy scratch. He's eligible to play, hasn't been charged, and it feels like the Texans are saying, we'll pay him $10 million for us to tank. That he's not going to play, doesn't want to play, we don't want him to play, we're going to wait until we get a good offer. How do you make sense of this?
I think they have gotten a couple of good offers, but they haven't gotten the offer recently. In my opinion, I think when the history chapter is written on this story, if we ever find out exactly what Carolina offered way back before we knew any of this stuff, we'll say, holy cow, they turned down that. And obviously, in retrospect, I'm sure they wish they took that, whatever that exactly is. But I think that the reason why he's not on the commissioner's exempt list yet, and why the NFL has really got to think hard about this, I think Lindsey Jones wrote a good story about it at the Athletic. They have to think about whether they want this sort of Damocles hanging over their heads. And if the Texans tomorrow said our starting quarterback is Deshaun Watson, is the league going to let that happen? That is going to be the test. I don't think the Texans are going to say that, but I do think that the league should clarify his status before the start of the year.
Yeah, I was wondering, can they punish him prior to this investigation being completed?
That's a good question. I don't think they want to set that precedent, but I also don't think they want to put a quarterback on the field with 22 cases involving a possible sex crime in each. They don't want to put that guy on the field. And I have a feeling right now that the Texans are doing the NFL office a solid by just keeping Deshaun Watson in limbo.
He's Peter King, and his column must read every Monday morning, Football Morning in America. The Packers and Saints relocate to Jacksonville. Why Jacksonville?
I was a little surprised it wasn't Dallas because that's where the Saints are. But I think logistically, the NFL thought that Jacksonville was the best place for them because of availability and because, quite honestly, they absolutely didn't want to do anything that would give the Packers any sort of home field advantage. And as strange as this sounds, Dan, I think it's a slight bit of a home field advantage for New Orleans fans who can drive 7 hours to this game, and it's going to be outside. So that is an advantage, even though New Orleans plays inside. They're practicing in that, 95-degree heat index most days. And so I just think in terms of home field advantage, Jacksonville seemed like a better place than Dallas. But again, I think that logistically there must have been some issues also in Dallas that prevented the relocation of the game there.
When do you make your Super Bowl pick?
Monday, and I haven't done it yet. The one thing I do know is I just can't pick Kansas City, Tampa. I want to. I think they're the two best teams, but it never happens. So did that happen with what? Dallas and Buffalo, right? Almost 30 years ago. It's just so rare. And I'm not sure whether I'm going to pick either one of them. I've got some interesting candidates on the outside that I'm considering.
Okay, but if I said you could pick Kansas City or Tampa to go to the Super Bowl, which one would you take?
I'd probably take Kansas City. And that's an odd thing to say because I do think that in many ways Tampa's road is slightly easier. I know this is crazy, Dan. I just think that COVID is going to impact teams in these hotspot areas. I just don't know how. It's just too prevalent, and it's just too hard to put your players in bubble wrap for the year. Maybe it'll have an impact on Kansas City players too, because in Missouri there's obviously scattered outbreaks as well. So I don't know, but I think both of those teams on paper right now are the best in the AFC and NFC.
If you were going to bet whether the Patriots make the playoffs or not?
Definitely yes.
Definitely
yes. Oh, I would bet that. In fact, right now, I am really on the precipice to try to determine which team is better right now, Miami or New England. And I think, Dan, there has been this thought that, okay, New England's got a lot of areas to rebuild. I didn't watch a lot of preseason football of the Patriots, but I'll tell you that front seven is damn good. And it's very deep. And they are going to give a lot of quarterbacks a lot of problems. I watched the Giants game the other day, and they overmatched, if that's such a word, the Giants' offensive front. Now, we all know that the Giants are in trouble on the offensive front, but I'll tell you, New England toyed with them, and I don't know. I don't put a lot in preseason games, but when Bill Belichick plays the ones, he is asking them to play at a regular season level, and I think their front seven could be really, really good.
Give me a good team that will disappoint this year.
If you ask me the opposite, I would say the Chargers. If you asked me a good team that will disappoint, I might say Miami, because even though I like Miami and I like a lot of moves they've made, right now, as we sit here, I just have no idea how Tua is going to play. And you can have all of the good wishes and good feelings going for you, but if your quarterback doesn't play well, you're not going to be good. And I worry a little bit about the Vikings too. I worry that the Vikings, who have so many good defensive players back for them, are really reliant on Kirk Cousins in a huge, huge way. And as I said at the start of this conversation, if an unvaccinated player tests positive on Friday, he misses his next 2 games. And whether it's going to be a pickup of Sean Mannion or a very weak backup quarterback situation led by Kellen Mond in Minnesota, I would not be confident you can win. Maybe you can win 1 game without Kirk Cousins. And I'm not saying that Kirk Cousins is Tom Brady, but I'm saying that he's a lot better than anybody else they have.
Thank you, Pete. We look forward to Monday's column. Thanks for joining us.
All the best, Dan. Thank you so much.
Peter King, Football Morning in America columnist and contributor to NBCSports.com.